All right, it's the Lex Pins and Pete show. It is Thursday, or no, it's Friday now. It is week 5. We had the incredibly boring Thursday night game last week. I don't think we'll talk too much about that. Maybe we'll cover some of the players, maybe some concerns about some of the players involved in that game. But first, a word from our sponsors. As always, the Lex and Pete show is brought to you by Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communication and social media company. They were once just a personal tool that has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to help build a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow Sundog on Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. That's Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism. That's easy peasy moving and service. Moving, muscle for hire, assembly, errands, you name it. Easy peasy is a multi-purpose team. If you need something, just ask. All right, Pete, as always, it's the power ranking show. I did send you my rankings before. I guess I didn't really explain my notes in it. I do kind of have, I guess, let me count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different tiers, I guess, if you want to call them. I think it can be easily explained, and we can just get right into it. We could start with the first tier. It's all to yourself. Number 12, Slippery Pete. The floor is yours. You got anything to say?
I mean, it's pretty nice to have a full tier by myself. Nothing new with my team in terms of a direction. In terms of the draft pick department, I'm pretty confident I'm going to have the 1, 2, 3 now. I think that's pretty locked in with your pick, my pick, and Amaral's. You could make a comeback, but I think with the injuries and the points for a hole that you're in now, and we can get into it when we get to your team, but I'm feeling pretty good about having the 1, 2, 3. And then again, we'll probably get into the playoff race a little bit, but now I'm just kind of rooting against Jalot not to make the playoffs. Get I like the 4 picks in top 6. That's what I was looking for. So other than that, I mean, it's kind of undeniable at this point that I am the prospect prophet. Last week, Bailey Zappi gets to start in my starting lineup. Brian Hoyer goes down first quarter. Bang, Bailey Zappi's playing, scoring points for Slippery Pete. This Thursday night, pick up Deion Jackson. 0 fab, by the way. 0 fab for Deion Jackson. Naheem Hines goes down, boom, Deion Jackson goes in, scores 11 points. So, nothing new with my team, but the managerial talent has been on display for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of those where you're kind of working with what you have, right? I will say, Deion Jackson was a guy that crossed my radar. I'm embarrassed to admit I actually just kind of forgot to get some waiver claims in. I'm not really kicking myself too hard because it's nothing that I felt like was, too important to my long-term outlook, and with where my team's at, it's not like I'm really trying to make too big of a push right now. But Deion Jackson, that was a good pickup. He definitely benefited from Naheem Hines. I got screwed last night. I had Hines over 4.5 receptions, 2 targets on the first drive. It was looking unbelievable. I think Deion Jackson had 4 targets. I think Philip Lindsay had a few targets. It was all there. It was perfect research by me, completely derailed by concussions, and we'll get to that in a little bit because it's kind of been the story of my season. I will say though, you do kind of benefit from the fact that you have the opportunity to start these guys. Most teams don't really have the spot to be starting them, but it always feels good too. And I'm kind of getting into that spot with my team right now. And I will say sometimes it's nice to just play your guys, right? You draft these guys, and you know that, hey, maybe they're not huge contributors as far as winning fantasy games, but it's nice to start. It's nice to it's nice to say, like, I was right. This guy got 11 points. I did it. I was right. What a pickup by me. Yep. I mean, when it comes to Jackson, who knows what'll happen?
$54 man.
Yeah, who knows what'll happen with Jackson? I don't know how much staying power he necessarily has with Jonathan Taylor coming back, but it's always nice to kind of catch that flash in the pan. It's nice to be right. One thing we forgot to do at the top of the show, and we'll do it while we're just stuck on your team, is just go over the playoff outlook and the lottery. Just a quick recap real quick. So right now, the top 3 seeds, the division winners are in order: Lamar and the Shits, the Occasional Vibers, JT and the Zits, and then 4, 5, 6 are wild card teams in order of points for 2 pins, Big Brain, who are about 30 points behind, and then I Love My Mom, who are about another 30 points behind Big Brain. We can kind of get into the teams there. We won't dive too much in the analysis quite yet. The lottery right now, and of course, this is max points for, and this is only by the non-playoff teams. So there would be a little bit of switch up if we weren't doing non-playoff teams. But as it stands right now, going 6-1, we got the Most Athletic Suns, we got Go Tigers, Carson Wentz, the Slow Stroke Kings, Waukesha, and Slippery Pete. All right, let's get back to the rankings. All right, so this next tier that I have, and I think you can almost split this one up because I think one of the teams in it, you can explain it away with injuries. That's maybe a little bit of spoiler. That is my team we're talking about. At 11, we have Waukesha. At 10, we have the Slow Stroke Kings. We can kind of discuss them together. I think that right now, as far as getting wins, generating points, I think these are two teams that are a little screwed. I think that you can, like I said, you can explain it away in different ways. I think Amaril's team is much weaker than mine on its face when you're looking at a fully healthy team. But where I'm at right now, I'm just kind of stuck in no man's land. I mean, we got Tua out indefinitely. We got Mac Jones. I'm really not buying the stuff that he's close to returning. I'm convinced it's like some weird
smokescreen.
Yeah, I'm convinced it's some weird rule that Belichick found, some loophole where, if he doesn't put Mac on the IR, they get some type of, benefit with the salary cap or something. And they're just rehabbing him on the side field at practice. And I feel like he's still weeks away from coming. I feel like it's going to be this kind of chicken game for the next few weeks as far as, is he going to play or is he not? But right now, I mean, I only got one quarterback to start. It's Davis Mills. That was my third string quarterback. He's not necessarily a high end option right now. And when you look right now, Traylon Burks is out. DeAndre Swift is still out. Montgomery could be coming back. Brian Robinson's making his way back. But right now it's really tough for my team. And like you were alluding to, when we were talking about your team and where the picks are, I mean, looking at max points for, it'll be tough. I mean, I'm 60 points behind McMorrow. I might have made a mistake. McMorrow and Mikey might actually be reversed. We'll have to check.
Right there.
But what's it called? I'm 30 points behind Mikey. I'm 60 points behind McMorrow. There is still a lot of season left, and part of it does feel almost like a typical season that I've had where I've started off slow and then putting up 100 points a game, and I'm doing less than that right now, but I'm not too far off that pace. And then I start putting up 120, 130, but I feel like that's going to be a little bit tougher to come by just because of the injuries. I mean, I think I can definitely pour it on later in the season, assuming I'm fully healthy. I think, maybe my rookies like Drake London will, become a little more consistent. I mean, he was wide receiver 15 going into this week. Miles Sanders has been great. Khalil Herbert's been great. Montgomery's been great. I feel like whichever Bears running back I have is going to be putting up points. I still got to get Swift back. I still think he's going to put up a ton of points this year. So even when he comes back after the bye, I think he's going to boost my team a ton. I think I'll get back into being competitive. I think, my playoff hopes are, they took a huge hit this week. But, I mean, who knows, right? I mean, all it takes is one hot streak. We'll get into the other teams after, but, some teams just put up massive points, and, one team in particular put up a ton of points this week, but there was a little uncharacteristic. So I think there will be a little bit more coming back down to earth for some teams. I think I'll, kind of regress towards, positive regression for me. I don't know if that'll be enough to close the gap and give me a chance at the playoffs, but I do think the lottery position could improve a little bit, or I guess get worse, from your perspective. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm in a tough spot. I feel like I am looking at that third, fourth, fifth slot, when it comes to the draft lottery. So we will see. But I mean, Waukesha, Amaril's team, I think they're a whole different story. Like I said, I feel like you could almost split that tier up just because I'm here because of some circumstances. Amaril's here because his team's pretty bad.
Right.
He's missing Amon-Ra, and that's a huge loss right there. But I mean, overall, Amon-Ra and DJ Chark, how much is that really taken from him? He just put up 38 points this week.
Right.
Is that right? Did I read that right? 39.68 points.
Won the toilet bowl award.
Yeah, hasn't gone over 100 yet. Yeah, I mean, I think Baker sucks. I think Jameis sucks. I'm not really seeing the upside there. Um, maybe Jameis still has it in him, but the Saints offense does not look good with him at quarterback. And I know he's playing hurt. But I'm thinking that maybe we're not going to see like this great Jameis resurgence that people might have been expecting. So I think Aaron Rodgers may be in a little bit of no man's land with a lot of positions. I think his receivers are good. I mean, Amon-Ra's good. Christian Watson has shown some promise in that Packers offense. I think he's going to take a little bit more time to come along. I think it's way too early to say like, oh, is he a bust? Anything like that. I think Christian Watson, he came in as a raw prospect. I think Dubs is kind of getting the benefit of being a more polished player and being the older player and everything. And being able to be more pro ready. I think Watson will come in and not necessarily eat into that, but I think we'll see maybe a more of a two-headed attack with these rookie receivers, maybe the second half of the season. But I mean, Christian Watson, what's his name? Alec Pierce was looking great. George Pickens. So I feel like Amron's got something to build off of with these receivers. Those running backs need a lot of work. Michael Carter, it looks like he's starting to really lose that backfield battle to Breece Hall. Chase Edmonds is not the answer long-term. I don't even know if he's the answer short-term. Besides that, I mean, we're talking about Jerick McKinnon, Benjamin Hubbard. So, they're definitely going to be, he's going to, the thing that Amaral is running into right now is that he's got these two, the Simcoe first and the Vibers first. And those are both projected pretty late picks. That could easily be the 11th and the 12th. He will have the 13th pick. So, I mean, that's not a pick that he can trade. He could always agree to trade that player in principle. But I'll be interested to see what he does. I don't know, if there's really room for him to make trades to move up and, maybe get better prospects. I mean, this is a highly touted class. Maybe he'll feel it's deep enough. And we're seeing, just from this past draft class, right? Garrett Wilson is looking great. Olave is looking great. Those were two of the last receivers off the board in terms of that tier of receivers. And, they're looking like, they could be two of the best. And, I mean, Pickens was did Pickens go in the first round with us? I think he might have been really second.
112, I think 112.
Yeah. So it's like, there's still talent there. It obviously just becomes a little more scarce. It's a little more, less of a quote unquote guarantee, but I trust Amaral's instincts. I think he'll figure it out. I mean, he has a ton of picks. So, even if he's using future draft capital to try and go all in on this draft, or maybe he's really playing the long game and, still looking at that 24, 25, trying to make some moves. But yeah, I mean, what do you think of this? I mean, do you agree that, maybe I could have split that up? I mean, I do think it's a little more situational. I think I maybe belong closer to this next tier than I do really with Amaral. I think Amaral's not quite as low as you. I think he could still put up more points on a weekly basis, but he's pretty close, I'd say. What do you think about it? What do you think about
I think like something to keep in mind is this is a power rankings list. So I do agree that your teams belong next to each other on a power rankings list and in that same tier. But it's situational, right? With Amaral's team, as we talk about Amaral's team, I mean, he inherited a dumpster fire. It's only been 4 weeks of football. So as we continue to talk about Amaral, I think we're going to talk about him and his moves as a manager and how he's building, not really much of his team in a whole in power rankings. You know what I mean? It's almost like a skip over until he's actually competing.
Yeah. And I think it can't be overlooked that, what you're doing is like the full commitment, supreme take, where it's kind of, that's abnormal. You're going to be putting up 50 points a week. That's very low where, Amaral would just be a normal tanking team. It just looks kind of bad or weird in comparison because, you're tanking and you're the one that's truly committed to it. And then, so by default, he's almost being compared to the teams above him. And, it's tough to,
it's not a fair comparison.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, I think in future weeks, I think my team can definitely move up, but, like we've said, my playoff chances might have taken a huge hit just in the past week with, all the injuries that I took on. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but there is a lot of season left. So who knows? I mean, all it takes is, 1 month of just getting really hot and you could be right back in it. All right. The next tier is another tier that's on his own. Maybe I belong in this tier actually, and maybe we could switch that. Maybe I should be in this tier along with McMorrow.
I don't know. It's tough to say.
Yeah, it's tough to say because of where our teams are at. And I mean, this like you said too, it is a power ranking. Right now, my team is definitely weaker, but I think in the long run, we're kind of comparable in different ways. And, I was just at the ORR game. I was talking to a representative from Big Brain. I was talking to a representative from Go Tigers. And we're kind of talking about McMorrow's team and where he's at. And, we've been talking about it as well, because it's kind of been a hot topic for I'd say over a year now, right? We've all been talking about when
Yeah.
is McMorrow going to commit to the rebuild. And I feel like we're getting closer and closer with every loss, every bad week. I mean, he put up 66.38 points last week. And it's just a team that, I'd hate to have this team. And we've said it a million times. This team's old and told. It's kind of what we expected, right? He came in, he won that year one championship because he had all the running backs, but now these running backs are getting old. Dalvin Cook, he's dealing with a shoulder injury. He's going to play through it, but, he hasn't really been doing much this year. He hasn't been putting up those RB1 numbers that we're used to seeing, the 20-point games, that type of thing. Derrick Henry, he's shown some life. I mean, last 2 weeks, he's put up 22 both times. And I think that, the Titans might have realized that they got to get back to their bread and butter, right? They have an opportunity to make a run. These Colts look really bad. The Jaguars, I think they're going to come crashing down back to earth a little bit. I don't think that they're 3-1 good like they've been playing. So I think the AFC South is wide open. The Titans are back to being 2-2. So it's like, that was my pick to win the division. And I think they've realized they got to rely on, what they know works for them. So just give the ball to Derrick Henry, let him do his thing. I don't know, hey, we'll see about the efficiency. He's picked it up in these last 2 games. It might have just been shaking off some rust, but Derrick Henry's look good. But then, Deontay Johnson hasn't been doing too great. The QB play is suspect there. Robert Woods has been a little shaky, but he has looked good in the last 2 weeks. Mark Andrews, he just had a huge dud, but, you can always expect him to put up big points. I think the big thing is, you got Zeke and you got Pollard kind of eating into each other. And, Pollard's the guy that, I think we might have talked about this last week, but he's the guy that I think he's just better in doses. He's better. I think the idea of Tony Pollard is better than the actual thing, right? When you get that big third down play, it's like, oh man, why don't they keep giving Tony Pollard the ball? And then when he does get the ball, he doesn't really do as much. When he has to take on, somewhat of a workhorse load, he's not able to do that. And, people kind of just forget about, the 1.3 points that he puts up last week, right? Everyone's so focused on the games where he has that huge receiving touchdown or, he brings a punt back or something like that. And he's electric. But, it's a very old, boring backfield. And I think that McMorrow, if he is smart and if he really wants to have some longevity, he needs to look to try and get rid of these guys now. I think he's in a spot where he can't really get those 23 picks. He might be, looking to get these 24 picks and, maybe get a head start on that and start stockpiling those and saying, fuck it. I mean, he still has his pick next year. So if he unloads his team, he can tank that pick, still get a good first rounder. And there's nothing wrong. I feel like we're kind of in a spot now where people feel like you have to have multiple firsts. It's like if you have one first rounder, it's still very good. You can still get a very good
skin in the game.
Yeah, all it takes is you nailing that pick, and you could have the best draft class with one pick. And so he can still do that. He can still trade his guys off now, and he should do it earlier. I don't know why he's waiting around and waiting until the deadline. I understand that prices go up, but at the same time, why not do that? Why not really try and tank your points for right now and get yourself that, I'd say right now he'd be looking at third pick at best, but it's like, I mean, if you can get the third pick, fourth pick, that's a really good thing to start with, especially if you're able to stockpile maybe some 24 picks and, really tank going into 24, have that good pick in 23 and look to really build in that 24 draft. I think that he can do that. And I think he should start looking to do it now. I think with some of the injuries that have happened, there are some running back needy teams. I think teams will be more willing to part with 24 picks right now. So, why not get a head start? I mean, it's worth talking about. I'm looking at him right now. Allen Robinson, he's horrible. He's getting 5-6 targets a game. He's not doing anything with them. There was that stat going around where separation is well below league average. He's just been very bad, and he's been getting the opportunities. I mean, he's still like in dynasty, he's still a hold. Even in redraft, I'd say he's still a hold just because he is getting those targets, and there is somewhat of a big investment in him right now. I mean, right now he's not getting paid a lot, but next year he's going to be getting like $10 million from the Rams. So they're going to want to make it work. And, I don't know if you can really rely on just throwing to Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee a combined 30 times a game. I think you got to spread it out. You got to get it to your $10 million receiver. We've seen the Rams be successful when they have 2-3 receivers going. So maybe Van Jefferson coming back will be something that opens up that passing game for the receivers more. So it's still wait and see with Robinson. But, my whole thing with him going into the season was that he was QB proof his whole career. He has Justin Fields now, who was supposed to be the most talented quarterback he's played with. We're seeing that maybe maybe he wasn't, but I think at the same time, the guy that's QB proof suddenly putting up, a dud of a season, that should be a concern when he's, reaching this age when he's 29. So this could be the beginning of the end for Robinson. It could be wash season for him. But yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean, you talk to McMorrow all the time. Where do you think his head's at as far as, looking forward maybe towards a rebuild?
Yeah, I think McMorrow's team is such a topic on the show and in general in the league because it's such an obvious sell, right? Like we have a group of managers who are very up to date with like acquiring assets and making runs for the championship. So like this team is such a topic because it's such an obvious sell. You look at teams like Mikey, who made a huge push last week. Seems like his team could figure it out. He owns his 23 first. He could he had the Elijah Mitchell industry. He could benefit from like a guy like Henry or Cook. And you had the Vibers lose Javante, also owns their 23 first or a 23 first. They own 2 pins, but and they could use a guy like Henry or Cook. So like I think, I talked to McMorrow. I'm not gonna air out his strategy because he's my guy. I trust him. Yeah, I know he trusts me to keep his thoughts in his own head, but he's definitely aware of the situation. And I think he's kind of just got his hand over the button, like waiting to press it. I do think it's going to be pressed this year at some point. It's just kind of about when. I think his best bet's timing these big weeks. Henry puts up, 102 touchdowns. Cook puts up 200, 150 yards. That's the time to sell these guys. And his hands over the button. He's just waiting to press it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, like it should just be a fire sale, right? I mean,
yeah,
Derrick Henry's a guy that right now you could still get a king's ransom, and it's like, why wait? Why let the time tick away?
Yeah.
Same thing, we can, maybe we'll talk about it with the most athletic sons, but it's the same thing with Brady, where it's like you have to understand that with age, especially in dynasty, that will kill your value. And
right.
Tom Brady, he could still be a top 10 quarterback, but you're not going to get anything for him on the trade market. In the offseason, when it comes to the deadline and desperate teams, you could definitely get more. But it's like, what can you really expect to get for a guy that, could very well retire after the season? And,
right.
When we're talking about running backs and, that cliff that they fall off of once they reach a certain age, it's, it's tough to try and time that out. And it's, kind of like, you're really playing playing with fire there because, you hold it for one week too long and that could just be it.
Not even just the running backs, but I think Mark Andrews is interesting too. Like the tight end disparity between Kelsey and Andrews and then everyone else is insane. That gap is so big. He's not going to benefit from having Andrews. He's not going to benefit from having Andrews for the next 2 years. So like, I think that's a sell too.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, that is a good point because, yeah, especially if he is looking at 24 picks, it's like, that now you're strapping in for 2 years.
Right.
So it's like, so why even have him, especially if you can get so much? I mean, like you said, right now with tight ends, it really is the top 2 and then
everyone else,
pretty much a bunch of dog shit.
Right.
And, that makes it just so much more valuable that it's like, you might be able to get a crazy amount for Mark Andrews. Yeah. Could be picks, could be players. I mean, you could get plenty of good stuff there. So
yeah,
I mean,
it's not much
got a lot to do, and
not a priority sell as much as the running backs, but like it's definitely, I think, part of the fire sale for sure.
Yeah, because if you end up having to keep him, it's like, all right, word, I got probably the guy that's going to be tight end 1. I mean, I think he was tight end 1 last year.
Yep.
Yeah, and he very well could be for the next, or at least flirting with it for the next
2 years,
5 to 7 years, maybe even longer with the longevity we're seeing out of some tight ends. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of covers it for McMorrow. So we'll let him be. I will say, and you know what, we'll stop it here because I'll just make a little bit of a statement. All right, McMorrow, look me in the eyes, brother. All right, I will outfloss your ass like you'd never even believe. All right. I've been flossing since college. All right. This has been my thing. All right. I've been Mr. Floss. I said, you know what? I'm going to take my dental hygiene seriously. I'm an adult now. Every room in my house, I got floss on the table here. I got floss on the chair there because you know what? If you're sitting around, you're doing something. How about you grab some floss? Look at this right here. That's one right there. That's a second one right there. All right. I just know that you went to the dentist. All right. Your dentist is looking at you saying your gums are a little puffy. All right, you got some chopped meat from last week stuck in the back molars. All right, you got to start taking some shoestrings, putting it between your teeth and getting it out. And I can't tell if it's the bullshit that you're spewing or if it's that week old meat in the back of your mouth, but something stinks. All right, so don't ever try me. Don't ever come at me about flossing again. All right, it's over. All right, it's over. Don't ever talk about flossing around me again. All right, focus on trading your shitty old running backs and move on. All right, let's move on to the next tier. All right, so this one was tough. All right, this was one, for me, I did the top 4 and I did the bottom 4. That felt pretty easy to me. This was tough for me to do because we have 3 divisional opponents that are all within striking distance of each other. So I didn't really know how to rank them, right? I mean, so I put Wallace at 8, Go Tigers at 7, the Most Athletic Suns at 6, and JT and the Zits, or I guess Gino and the Zits now, at 5. So I'll start with Wallace, right? So my reason for putting him at 8, right? I didn't want to overreact too much to the big week. He put up 155.54 points. But when you look at his first 3 weeks, right, he had 78.86, 124.48, 106.98. That's an average of 103.44. So, this was just a huge explosion of a week, right? Brees Hall looked great. Penny had a huge week against a very bad Detroit defense. He has not had that great of a season up until then. So, maybe take that with a grain of salt. He's got DK, he's got Waddle. They've looked great. Waddle's looked amazing for the most part. Who knows what'll happen now with Teddy Bridgewater being in, how much that'll change the approach with the offense. If he'll still put up those numbers. I mean, I still think he's going to get the targets. But we'll see, right? There's something remain to be seen, especially we don't know how long he's going to be playing with Bridgewater. DK's look great. I mean, I think that Seahawks offenses, or I should say Seahawks team, I think they're underrated, right? I don't think they're great. People are talking about them like they're shit. I think they're average. And, I think they're a team that can go out and compete. Geno Smith, he takes care of the ball. And I think that's the most important thing for these bad teams. If you're not turning the ball over, you give yourself a chance to score. And you also prevent the other team from building up a lead on you. So, you keep yourself in the game. And, DK, he's looked pretty good. And, people thought he was going to take a huge hit with Geno at quarterback. He's been fine. He's made some big plays, maybe not the same upside. I'd say certainly not the same upside with Russ, but, he's making do. Hawkinson had that huge week. He put up like 35 points. He did that with everybody out, right? I mean, that was very uncharacteristic for what we've seen from Hawkinson for a long time, for a while now, right? I mean, he's still, we know that the talent's there. He was a big prospect, big tight end prospect coming in. I think he was a top 10 pick by the Lions. But he hasn't shown that same upside that we're, talking about these tight ends that,
it's like his rookie year.
Yeah, it's like people thought, him and Fant coming out were going to be Kelsey and
one tight end
became, and he hasn't been that. He's been more of that average, more of like the Hunter Henry type, putting up those 10 points and maybe popping off for a little bit, getting some touchdowns. But Hawkinson did it with nobody in there, right? Craig Reynolds was getting carries. Jamal Williams was the workhorse. Amon-Ra was out. DJ Chark was out. So Josh Reynolds was the wide receiver one. So
which Nick had in the starting lineup.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's just, that's a huge week. I think Nick just had everybody hit at the right time this week. So that's why I kept him at 8. I feel like, especially in the division that he's in, these 3 teams that are battling for the Gabagool division, that's a much weaker division. There's no hiding that, right? So, Wallace, he's still dealing with playing behind Simcoe, playing behind Big Brain. So I put him at 8 just because, I didn't want to overreact, like I said, to one big week. And also he still has way more of an uphill climb in terms of making an impact. I mean, he has that 6th playoff spot right now. He's got the Suns back, on his ass, 24 points back. Mikey's 38 points back. I feel like those are the teams that are really making that push. I think we're maybe getting more into a, with McMorrow maybe falling out, it could be, that race is really kind of narrowing down, right? We're maybe getting into 3 teams instead of 5 teams pushing for that spot. So, all these teams got a good spot. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like right now Wallace's position is a little bit weaker than teams ahead of him. Wow. Where do you think Wallace is at?
I love the ranking. I was wondering actually if you were going to overreact to the 155, but sounds like you're thinking just like I did. I mean, that matchup was Detroit versus Seattle. It was like a 90-point total of a game, 2 worst defenses in the NFL in terms of like points scored on. And he had Rashad Penny, DK, Hawkinson, and Reynolds, right? So he had the 4 starting wide or fantasy assets players in the worst defensive matchup of all time. So for this was just one week. It's 1 week. I write it off. I think Nick's spot is right where you got him. The only thing I think is interesting is like, is he kind of like he owns his own pick right now? He's in the playoffs. Is he kind of playing himself into like this middleman purgatory?
Yeah, I mean, he very well could. And another thing I want to mention too, Zach Wilson had a receiving touchdown. So,
which is nuts. Yeah.
And Zach Wilson,
as stars in
okay, he stepped up. He showed balls in the last drive. Zach Wilson looked horrible. He did not look good in that game. But that's besides. But yeah, I mean, I think that he definitely is playing himself out of that pick just from what we're seeing right now. But at the same time, it's like who knows? I mean, maybe it's worth it for him, right? I mean, especially if he can sneak in and grab that spot, and like I just said, it looks like we went from 5 teams to 3 teams in the matter of a week, fighting for that spot. So it's still wide open. I do have these teams the teams that ranked above him, I do certainly like their odds more. Just moving forward, I mean, like I said, he scored 52 points above his average from the first 3 weeks. So, I never want to overreact, but yeah, it will be weird to see. I mean, if he stays here, but at the same time, I mean, he could very well drop in the next couple of weeks. It's not that hard just to drop a couple back. All it takes is one bad week and he could be right back in it, but it's worth a shot for him right now, right? I mean, the most athletic Suns, go Tigers. They're not world beaters. So, if he feels like he can compete with them and, Breece Hall, he's starting to break out a little bit. He's starting to claim that backfield. Maybe Penny can put something consistent together. But I mean, overall it's tough. You got to say maybe Nick's better just committing to the tank.
It's just not so much committing to the tank, but like getting these guys like Penny's a 26-year-old running back.
Yeah.
Nick's 2 years away from competing. Like he's never going to help him win a championship.
Yeah.
Guys like Zay
I'm
Jones, Corey Davis, 27-year-old wide receivers that are putting up points for him that like he's never going to need these guys. And they're ruining his draft pick.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, so I'm looking at the roster right now. It is I guess the only trouble he runs into is like, I think Penny and Corey Davis are really kind of it as far as
who to sell,
assets he can trade away. But I mean, that's something you might as well, right? I mean, if you get like a second for Penny, if you get like a decent pick for Corey Davis, like, why not, right? And just add to that because, like you said, they're not going to help him win. They're not part of his long-term picture anyway. So why not just get whatever value you can for him and kind of see what you can do. But I mean, yeah, he's got his own pick. He's got that big brain pick. So I feel like he is. I think he's in a position where it's like, he might as well try it out, maybe feel it out. And then, he could be a guy maybe around the deadline. He looks to just kind of offload those guys and just sink back down and just get himself into that top 6. I mean, we've been talking about these draft classes have been so deep that, maybe you don't have to make that push for the 3rd pick and you can be happy with getting the 6th pick and just hope that, a guy like, Olave's there. I mean, Olave was there for Bowen at 10, I think. And, I think these next couple draft classes, I think we'll see some depth. And, I think that, yeah, maybe it's just worth it. And he has that pick too. So, if he wants to, maybe it'll be tough to pry those picks out of your hands, but, there's always the opportunity to package some picks together and try and move up. So, yeah, I think it's worth just dipping the toe in for Wallace and kind of getting a taste and seeing what it's like to, experience being considered a playoff team. But, yeah, I mean, we can just get into these next ones because I think we can kind of talk about these 3 together. So I got Go Tigers ranked 7th, the most athletic Suns at 6, and then JT and the Zits at 5. So what makes it tough, right, is as it stands, you could argue that JT and the Zits, Gino and the Zits, I gotta get that right. But you could argue that, they might actually be the weakest team right now. The reason that he's ranked above him is that he is 4-0, so he does have 2 wins on both of them. So he's got a pretty firm grip on the division lead right now. So you got to give him some respect there. But, typically I rank the divisional guys higher and, I kind of give them that top 3, but it's tough, right? Because it's a weak division. We've kind of seen it the past few years where, these guys, sneak in and, all of a sudden the team that would be the 6th seed is the 3 seed because they won the division. But, that's what makes it so interesting. That's kind of why I like having the divisions too. And, the big thing is also if Bowen was a top 2 seed, I wouldn't be feeling that way, but because he's a top 3 seed and he will have to play in that first round of the playoffs, I have to kind of rank him like I would amongst these other teams. And I can't kind of take that, stock into consideration because he's going to be playing one of these teams. And if I feel like a team's better than him, then he could be sent back in week 1. But, that 4-0 record right now, that's strong. It's hard to dispute. He's got a firm clamp on that top 3 seed for now. But Mikey's making some pushes and the most athletic Suns. I mean, they're always walking on eggshells, right? They got to play perfect football to compete. But when they do, that's a very good team. That's a team that's putting up points. I mean, the most athletic Suns right now, they got 441.72 points. That's more than Go Tigers.
6.
Let's see, where am I at? Let's see. The
6.
Suns.
They're points. Jalo's 6th in the league. Points for.
Yeah, he's 6th in the league ahead of Mikey and Zach. And so Mikey's got more points than Zach. Zach has the 3rd most points out of the 3 of them.
I think they're 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, they're 6, 7, 8. Zach does have more potential points, way more potential points than Mikey. So, it could be a little bit of a managerial thing. But I mean, I think that the most athletic Suns and the Zits for sure are much closer than maybe we thought at the beginning of the season. And a lot of that is due to the, kind of injuries and the morale hit that Bowen's taken. But I mean, we could talk about that trade real quick too. I mean, so he traded Gino for Jimmy G straight up. What do you think of that move? What do you think Bowen's doing right now?
I don't know. I mean, Bowen's getting Kenny Pickett now, right? Like Kenny Pickett's starting. It seems like I feel like it'd be tough for him to lose the job back to Trubisky at this point. So like I don't know. Like I would have get the move to Geno earlier in the year. I think he honestly just hates Jimmy G. He hates Kyle Shanahan and he hates the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I felt. And
like he
what I said to him
Jimmy
was
G off his roster.
Yeah, what I said to him was like I just felt like neither Jimmy G nor Geno are his long-term answer. And right now I would certainly rather have Geno. So as far as a 1-for-1 trade goes, great, because Bowen doesn't really care if Jimmy G gets a starting job somewhere else, because like you said, he has Pickett coming. He has Stafford. Maybe Geno's good enough to win himself another year as a Seattle starter. Maybe he's good enough to win himself another year as a bridge guy somewhere else. But, I just felt like that quarterback spot wasn't really a long-term answer for him anyways. So why not try and make some type of an upgrade? And right now, Geno's QB 10. And, like I said, he's taking care of the ball. He's got 2 picks through 4 games. He's thrown 2 touchdowns in 3 of the 4 games. So he's got 6 touchdowns. He's gone over 300 yards in the last 2. I mean, it's no coincidence, right? The first 2 weeks were against Denver and Seattle, San Francisco, 2 very good defenses. And, he was fairly, he was average against Denver. He was not very good against San Francisco, and he popped off against 2 bad defenses with Atlanta and Detroit. So, maybe it is a little bit of fool's gold for Bowen here, and maybe he's buying a little too high on Geno Smith. That's to be seen. I mean, New Orleans will be a good test this week. That's a good defense. And, first week with Geno, it'll be a good way to see if, if this is worth it. But at the same time, I mean, what the hell is Jimmy's upside, right? Maybe Jimmy G gives him a more consistent floor. That Jimmy's going to be starting for the whole year. But what? Why not roll the dice on Geno, who's out here getting 31 points and, trying that? I think Bowen just needs to spark a life. Maybe something to see before, it's tough to judge Pickett's game last week, right? He had the 10 completions, 3 picks.
Yeah, I throw that.
Never had a pass hit the ground.
Not a full week of practice.
And and it was also, it's against the Jets, and it was also just one of those. It was a lot like how Zappy came in, right? It's let's just hand the ball off, let's just dump it off, let's play it safe, make them comfortable out there, and it's just kind of tough to judge the tape there. So this, I mean, not an easy test going into Buffalo as your first start, but this will be a real good way to see what Bowen's got in Pickett. I guess there's always a little bit of concern with these guys being rushed, right? Tomlin seemed so set on Pickett sitting out the year. But I think we're in an era right now where a lot of these guys are very good. I think we're seeing a lot of very good rookies, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think these guys are coming in more prepared, and all these rich kids that went to all these camps growing up. So these are very good players coming in, and that's why we're seeing these receivers come in and step up. But yeah, I mean, Bowen right now, he's got something good with Tyreek, Debo, Chris Olave, Damian Pierce seemed to have his breakout game. James Robinson has been so strong. Obviously, he wasn't great last week. And then, we've had our discussions about the Green Bay backfield, but Bowen's still got a strong team. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's going to be in the playoffs. It's more just will he be the 3 seed or will he be the 6 seed? I don't think. Yeah. I don't think he's in danger of falling out of there, but
that's right.
It's a lot of fluctuation, and I mean, there's a lot of season left, but that 2-game lead so early is he should be feeling comfortable right now. I mean, you got any more comments on these other 2 teams? I mean, like I said, that's why I rank them together, just because I feel like any given week. I mean, right now with the 2-game lead, Bowen's obviously got somewhat of a buffer until at least the next power rankings. But as far as points go, he's got the least points out of the 3 of them. So I mean, I feel like this division's wide open. I think we could see 3 playoff teams, which is so funny out of this division that we always talk about being so weak. But, if they get 3 playoff teams, that would be something special. And
I mean, I'm betting on Gabagool to have 1 playoff team, just the division winner. Bowen's team, I really don't know what's going on with Bowen's team. Like, I don't know if it's just a slow start, but I know he's lucky to be 4-0. I mean, 8 points for does not equate to 4-0. We can attribute that to him playing the Gabagool division in his first 3 starts, and then he played McMorrow in week 4 and put up 66, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the least points against by a pretty big margin. I mean, he's got less points against than I do, and I just played a guy that scored 38 points.
Right.
So,
it's like JT's banged up, Pickett is in, it's AJD versus Aaron, Damian Pierce has come on. Like, there's just so much going on with Bowen's team, and I just don't know if this team is like.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
I just don't know if he's good yet.
Yeah, and speaking about JT, I mean, I forgot to even mention him, but it's like the thing I'm worried about, and especially watching that Colts game, because most of the Colts highlights I had seen was just red zone, and so really being able to watch him, it was bad. And I can now see why Jonathan Taylor was putting up 6.8 points and 10.6 points and
Yeah, their offensive line
3.38 yards per carry. It's like, because Matt Ryan cannot do shit. So it's like they're just going to stop the run because they do not fear him throwing the ball at all. And that could that could make it a really long season for Jonathan Taylor. And, I think maybe it's better that he just, missed the week and, take that week off, rest. Sometimes it's better to just kind of reset your mind, reset your body, and come back. I mean, they got a very favorable matchup against Jacksonville next week. I mean, he only put up 6.8 points against Jacksonville, but they haven't been great against the run this year. So, that's an opportunity to come back and kind of reestablish himself. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like Bowen's team is in just such like a weird spot right now. And maybe, he gets a little antsy. I think he's just looking to make some moves and looking to kind of change some faces. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think he just hated Jimmy G. I think he wanted to get kind of that toxicity of the Niners quarterback situation out of there. And, he did
like
it.
The
so,
vibes.
yeah, I mean, but those wide receivers are still so terrifying. The running backs are strong. So, I mean, he's still got a good spot. But like I said, it's going to be, will he be the 3 seed? Will he be the 6 seed? We'll see.
And then Jalot's team, Jalot's team's impressed me. I called the first Power Rankings episode. I called out Jalot's team and I said James Conner was a fraud, CEH was a fraud. And he's proved to be sneaky deep. I mean, 441, 6th in points for. Kamara hasn't played all year, or he has been banged up. Dak's been out. CD seems to be QB proof, holding wide receiver 12 with Cooper Rush in there.
Yeah.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back 4 right now. Sure, he's 5 touchdowns, very TD reliant, but still holding running back 4. And then Goff is QB 5. So I mean, he's got Patterson out. He's proved to be sneaky deep. And I'm kind of worried holding his pick. He's in good position for the amount of injuries he's had. And if these players come back and the guys he's put up points, I mean, Jamal Williams, are insane. But
so that's kind of my one concern with that team though, is is it just too good to be true? And as I was saying earlier, it's like they have to play perfect football to really just, stay in it. It's like, as soon as one thing goes wrong, that's when they can be screwed. And, you could just think about, I mean, Patterson's now to the IR, but it's like, all right, Clyde, he's been putting up the points.
All touchdowns, though.
But it's been all these touchdowns. I mean, he was getting some love in the receiving game, more than he has gotten in years past. But, his rushing numbers and his raw numbers without the touchdowns aren't really that great. So there could be some regression there. I mean, James Conner, it feels like we're seeing the touchdown regression from last year. And then you also got to think, right? I mean, Jamal Williams, he's definitely benefiting. I mean, that's 2 weeks in a row, right? I mean, he catapulted up the running back standings because of these 2 weeks without Swift. But, once Swift comes back, it's like, I know that he's still vulturing these touchdowns from Swift and vulturing some carries, but it's like, it's still DeAndre Swift. That's still their star running back. He's going to come back in. He's going to, take over. So it's like, there's an opportunity for, I mean, even like, Jared Goff, right? I mean, Goff did have, he had that QB6 season in 2018, but since then, right? I mean, for the most part, he was QB 13, but then we're looking at the 20s. So it's like, is the QB 5, is that too good to be true too? Because I mean, it could just be a game script thing. And, maybe this could be a thing that rides out for the season. And, I think Goff's underrated. I think he's a guy that still belongs starting in the league, but
I was lower on Goff.
At some point you got to look at a guy and say, he is what he is. And, he's off to a good start because, these, the Lions are putting, allowing 1 million points, and that's kind of forcing him to throw. And maybe that continues and maybe that keeps him in the spot. But, I think that I think a lot of Jalot's success right now is situational, and it's more of a matter of how long is that situation going to keep up. So there is a little bit of a worry there, but I mean, right now he's got the most points for, most max points for in the division. So not only is he scoring the most points, but he is showing that he has that depth, and, he's not playing his max lineup. So it's like, he's still leaving some points on the table, but I mean, it's a good team. I do worry a little bit with, whether it's injuries or just flat out regression, what could happen to that team. But, right now, like I said, when they're playing that perfect football, they're as dangerous as anybody. So hopefully they can keep that up. Let me just make sure. I think that covers. I mean, I think that covers everything for that division. I think we can move on. All right, we're in the next tier. We're in tier 5, I guess. The 4th and 3rd ranked teams. I think that there's some debate to be had here. But this is currently where I stand. So I got 2 pins at 4, and I got Big Brain at 3. So a little bit of shake up, right? I think we were having the Vibers and 2 pins. Was that our top 2 last one?
2 pins was 2 weeks ago, last Power Rankings episode. So probably the biggest drop out of everyone in terms of power.
So I was doing some looking at the numbers, right? They're third in points for. They're not currently the division leader, so that already kind of knocks them back a little bit, but they are third in points for. They are playing 91% of their max points for. So they're getting kind of everything out of their lineup, but to me that almost makes me think, well, they're doing all that. They're playing, 91%. I think the next highest, we got some in the 80s. But it's like, they're playing, pretty much as good as they can be, and they're third in points for. Is that maybe their ceiling? And, I worry about their running backs still. I feel like, we were talking about Jones and Dillon, and I think we can have that same conversation about Harris and Stevenson. And then, he's had Antonio Gibson, who had that good first week, but he's just been regressing every week. And now Brian Robinson coming back, and it feels like the Commanders really want Robinson to be the guy. So George could be kind of facing the same thing as last year, where, they're just screwed at running back. And, that's a team that could be looking to make a move there because, Stevenson and Harris, it's like, how many points can they really put up? I mean, are we talking about guys that, it's just like Dillon and Jones, where you're just going to hope that they combine for 20, 25 points a game?
Right.
And, and if Gibson's going to be taking a back seat to Brian Robinson whenever he comes back, then that puts him in a lot of trouble because Isaiah Spiller's not getting carries. Breeda's not getting carries. Kenyon Drake's not getting action like that. So, we could be seeing them be buyers at the deadline again and trying to make that big move. But, at the same time, the floor is just so good with Kupp getting 1 million targets a game. Jamar Chase is obviously still great, following up that great rookie season. Stephon Diggs always. I think they're, it's interesting though, because, and this is kind of why I bumped him down a little bit. Kittle has not done much fantasy wise in the game since coming back. He's been very involved in the run game, as he always has been, but it looks like they're using him so much more as a run blocker right now, and he's not getting those targets. We're not seeing that receiving upside right now. And then Devontae Smith, right? He seems like, this season just feels like it might be boom or bust for him. I mean, he had 0 points in week 1. He had 3.2 points last week. He exploded in week 3. He had a good game in week 2, but I feel like AJ Brown is clearly that wide receiver 1. Dallas Goedert has been a great target for Jalen Hurts as that tight end, as that safety valve, and even just being in the middle of the field and kind of running those intermediate routes. And then Miles Sanders has been a workhorse back for them. So I feel like Devontae's taken a little bit of a back seat. Still, a great top tier fantasy asset for a dynasty perspective. 23-year-old wide receiver. I think he was, anyone that doubted him coming to the league, I think that's a little laughable at this point. I thought it was laughable then. I mean, we're talking about 22-year-old being too skinny. I mean, I know I'm a lot bigger than I was when I was 22 and I'm 26. And it's a lot easier to put on weight as you become an adult. And I think he's looking bigger. I noticed that in training camp, he just looked noticeably more muscular. So it's like, he's still a great dynasty asset, but it's like, we're starting to see kind of that problem with Two Pins' depth where, if Parker or if Smith can't be relied on every week, if Kittle's not providing that elite tight end upside that we see, and if he's not getting that, if he doesn't really have a true RB1, then, those quarterbacks and those receivers can only take him so far. And, that floor is still very good, but, I'm starting to kind of question that upside until Two Pins makes a move. What do you think? It's a huge drop for them at 4, but, what do you think about that ranking?
Yeah, I like it. They just haven't been as dominant as you've seen the Vibers and Simcoe been, or like how they were last year. I mean, these wide receivers they have has been their calling card, and we just didn't see them pop off like last week like we're used to. With Kittle, like he's never really had Kittle, like never really on his team. So true. Like I'm not like saying he lost Kittle, but we just haven't seen it from him. His quarterbacks, I think his quarterbacks are the ones that give him the high floor with Mahomes and I'm blanking. Herbert? Yeah, Mahomes and Herbert. That kind of gives him the high floor. And then the wide receivers go off and he puts up, those 130-point weeks, but we just didn't see those wide receivers go off last week like they usually do. And that kind of brings him down to, the 100, 120-point range. So, I mean, this is still a top 3 team, in my opinion. 4 in the power rankings right now, but it's still a top 3 team, in my opinion. We just haven't seen the dominance from the Two Pins like we've seen. And they're a prime candidate to get a running back from McMorrow, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, and that's so. Yeah, and so the big thing, right, is I'm still ranking them 4th, right? They're still top 4.
It's not crazy.
I give Big Brain the edge just because of recency bias, right?
But that's
power ranking. It's what have you done for me lately? So Two Pins the last 2 weeks, 112.86 points per game. Weeks 1 and 2, they're putting up 148.91. So, I think that kind of demonstrates almost what we're talking about with that floor that is provided from the team. You're still, if you put up 113 points a game, that's still a very competitive team. If you do that for a whole season, if you do that for a whole season, you're going to be a 5 or 6 seed. You're still going to be in the playoffs. So, the fact that that's kind of what they're doing when they're down is pretty good. And, I think it's expected that they're going to make a move. I think that they are going to address that running back situation. So I'm not counting them out by any means. Just right now, I give these 3 other teams the edge. I think that top 2 is locked in. And, with how Big Brain's been playing recently, I do give them the edge. And, we'll move right on to Big Brain as well. So, week 4, they put up 148.92, which is hilarious because, I just said Two Pins was averaging 148.91 in weeks 1 and 2. So they put up 148.92. They're 4th in points, 3rd in max points for, I feel like they might be heating up a little bit. And, maybe not even heating up. I think we're just kind of seeing that, the consistency, right? I mean, looking at their points, 117, 121, 105, a little bit of a dip, right back up to 148.92. So they're putting up 100 points every week. This is, maybe not the same dominant Big Brain that we're used to seeing, but, I think kind of the soft-spoken path is kind of what might work in their favor. I think maybe potentially not being a divisional winner, not getting that bye week, not that it, necessarily matters in fantasy football, but, kind of having that new look and trying something different might just play in their favor. And, Rodgers, he has not been fantastic. And, I don't know if we're going to see too much growth from him. I think maybe 16 to 20 points might be what to expect from him. I think, kind of being in that middle ground more towards that 16 points is kind of what we're going to be seeing. Tannehill hasn't been great. I mean, they did just trade for Jimmy G. Maybe that's their quarterback move. I thought maybe they'd be more in the mix for a guy. I mean, and hey, if the Suns are going to be competing, then they're not going to be looking to trade Brady. But, I do kind of worry about that. I do worry about the QB play a little bit. But, the rest of that lineup, as always, is just so dominant. When they're healthy, it's unbelievable. We saw Eckler kind of have, a little bit of a resurgence last week. We talked about McCaffrey.
Bomb.
Yeah. And, we talked about McCaffrey. He did put up 20 points last week, 21. Maybe it plays in their favor having him for the first 17. You're not getting that same, 25, 30 points every game out of him. But, hey, as long as he's in your lineup, maybe that's just for the best. Cooper did put up a stinker last week. I do think that might be a little bit more than norm. It might be more 50-50 than it was looking at the beginning of the season. Jacoby Brissett's just hard to trust, right? And, Deshaun Watson's not really going to be back in time to be, fantasy relevant for not only himself, but, the other guys, right? He comes back, week 13?
Week 13.
No, I mean, I guess that could be huge for Big Brain if they make it that far, if they're, competing for the champ. Well, I guess what? We go, last week of the season's week 13? Or that first
14,
week of the playoffs?
14, 15, 16. I know we use week 17 as playoffs. So 17, 16, 15, 14 is the last week of the regular season.
Yeah. So, I mean, Amari Cooper could end up getting a huge boost in time for the playoffs. I mean, Devontae Adams, maybe he's also not going to be as dominant he's been in years past, but it's like, this is just another team. And I think that maybe that speaks to why Two Pins and Big Brain are right together. I think that their floors are just so good that they're always going to be here. And then it kind of is just down to, the other question marks, and in this case, the quarterbacks, are if they're going to step up and, kind of, get them, propel them more towards that season. How are you feeling about Big Brain? I'm personally feeling confident. Like I said, I think that, kind of taking the back seat and not, kind of blowing their load in the regular season could end up playing in their favor, but I'm curious where you're at with them.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of blew their load right in my face.
That is true.
Last week, I pointed out strongly that this is a very wide receiver heavy year. By that, I mean, like the top 50 wide receivers are crazily outscoring the top 50 running backs or top 30 or whatever. And then they came back and Eckler put up 31, CMC 21, Chubb 19, Mixon 15 right in my face, put a 99.36 beat down on Slippery Pete. So, I mean, you see the ceiling they have when all these running backs hit. You see the ceiling they have when all these running backs hit. I just think it's more of a wide receiver year, and I think that this running back play is going to be spotty. Like, they put it all together in 1 week and put up 150, but it's spotty. And then the mediocre quarterback numbers is continuing throughout the season with Big Brain. And they, I really hope Jimmy G's not their move at quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised because if you got 2 owners on that team who don't even know how to throw a football. But I really hope Jimmy G wasn't their move at quarterback, because I think that this is the team that needs a quarterback. Like you said, Tom Brady could be the seller, could be the buyer for them at the deadline. But Big Brain, yeah, I mean, they're a strong team. You can see the ceiling with these running backs. I just don't trust the consistency.
Yeah, and that Jimmy G trade was weird on their part, right? I don't really see why they did it. Like, for Bowen, I get it because I feel that Geno is a better asset for this season. But it's like with them, it's like, what? Okay, so you just got a weaker third string quarterback. And it's like, is this a guy that you're now trying to commit to in the future? I mean, I guess maybe they view it as a
I think it's
long-term
more of
backup
like,
for them.
yeah, I think it's more of like, all right, he'll be a backup this year for our bye weeks, and then if he signs another team and starts next year, we'll be happy.
Yeah,
You know
because
what I mean? Like
I do think that Jimmy is more likely to be a starter moving forward than Geno
Gino's
is,
done after
for
this
other
year.
teams. So yeah, I guess I can see that. It feels so unexciting, and it's like, all right, I
This is
guess
boring trade.
but I mean, this is a league that we look for the big trade. So I feel like we look down on the more
Small town.
practical moves that
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Let's get to the top tier. I think these are two teams. They could be ranked together, but I think that it's hard to debate the number one right now. At number two, though, we have a very steady team that I guess has some question marks. Personally, I don't think it's too serious, but we got the occasional vibers. So this is a team that's just putting up steady points every week. They've been, let me see, 147, 137, 121, 127. It's just dominance every week. They're putting up those points. They are an underwhelming 2-2 given that. But they are the divisional leaders right now. They are second in points for. So they're crushing it. I mean, Javonte Williams did go down. That's a big injury for them. But at the same time, this is a team that we always said depth was their strength. And now I guess they got to put that to the test, right? They got Jeff Wilson. They got Leonard Fournette. They got Mostert. They got Cam Akers. They got Kareem Hunt. So it's like, they have their options. Maybe not the top end that, Javonte was expected to be this year, but, they can fill that role there. And they still got, Josh Allen, they got Kyler, they got AJ Brown, Travis Kelce, Sutton, Mike Williams, Terry McLaurin still on their bench, Gabe Davis on the bench. So it's like, there's still plenty of opportunities. So that depth is going to, be able to step right in. And, that's what you make those trades for, right? That's why you go and get those guys. Some other teams might've been screwed in, that similar spot. So, I mean, we're seeing my team right now, be, just eaten alive by injuries and, a little bit more than, I think my team wouldn't look as bad if just Swift was out, but losing Williams like that, losing your RB1 could, kill a lot of teams. So, the fact they're able to step in and Jeff Wilson's look great, Fournette's always great with Brady, and their bench options are good. So, I'm not too concerned about the Vibers dropping off at all. I don't think this is that big of a hit. I think the concern should more be long-term, making sure that Javonte's okay. And this is a guy that they can, rely on to come back and, kind of be what he was. But I mean, I think in the short term right now, Vibers doesn't take any type of hit. Number two team could easily be the number one, and they will be in the hunt. Come the playoffs. I guess before we get your commentary, let's get to Simcoe as well, and then we can kind of talk about the two teams together because I think it's worth talking about together. So number one, of course, Lamar and the Shits, best team in the league, most points, most max points for. So not only are they getting the most points or leaving points on the bench, they could be absolutely killing us. I just feel like this is a team that kind of has, I'm already starting to engrave the name on the trophy. 4-0 record. Barkley's a generational running back. Lamar's the MVP. Hurts is the MVP. You might see a co-MVP this year. Evans is top 5. Hopkins is coming back. He's overcoming, he's doing all this while having maybe the biggest tight end bust of all time in Kyle Pitts, taking up a roster spot. So, I think it's very impressive what Simcoe's continuing to do, despite being snake bitten with injuries to Gus Edwards and stuff like that. But what do you think? Do you think it's a fair ranking? Do you think Simcoe, I know you've been big on Lamar and the Shits as the, runaway favorite in this league. You think that's a good 1 and 2? And, how close I think I should ask you, how close do you think it is between 1 and 2?
So I think it was a lot closer before this week. I'm going to disagree with you. I think Javonte was a very big loss for 2 pins. Sneaky, very big loss. Or 3 pins, sorry. With the Vibers in general, this is the strongest 2-2 team you're ever going to see, right? Strongest 2-2 team you're ever going to see. They lost both their games to a 127 and then to
that was George,
they scored 127 and lost.
Yeah.
And then scored 137 and lost to George. Yeah. So strongest 2-2 team you ever see. They've scored 120 in 4 straight weeks. But I kind of dug into the Javonte injury a little more because I wanted to see how much it was going to affect them. Looking at Fournette first, won the snap share 61 to 38% to White last week. Something to keep an eye on. I think Rachaad White's making some moves there. So I'm not as strong as I was on Fournette in the first 3 weeks when he was kind of looking like a bell cow. And then you mentioned that these guys in his bench could step in, but I I don't really trust it. Akers, we know he lost the snap share to Henderson early on in the season. We kind of expected that to flip, but even last week, 59% Henderson, 38% Akers. So like, I'm not putting Akers. I don't think Akers could belongs in the starting lineup. Jeff Wilson's been great. I don't have the timeline on Elijah Mitchell, but I assume he's coming back this season at some point, right?
Yeah, I think he's like a 6 to 8 week guy.
Yeah. So like, I just don't try. I mean, they have depth. These guys are definitely holds and like could step into larger roles, but I think Javonte hurts them a lot more than on the surface. When you see the names on the bench, you're like, oh, you can throw them in. I don't really think you can throw them in, and I'm worried about Fournette's snap share. So
yeah, I guess the way I saw it, right, is
a must trade for a running back from the Vipers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I saw it is, so Javonte really hasn't done much. He put up 14.3 in week 1, and that was with 12 targets,
That's
11
fair.
receptions.
He hasn't been great.
And then since then, he wasn't able to put up, more than 10 points. And, so we haven't really, they've been doing this kind of, still without Javonte and, with very replaceable production out of him.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how much better it was going to get for Javonte because Garrett Bowles just went down. That Broncos offense looks very bad.
Horrible.
And, so it's like, I feel like we're kind of falling into the trap of, maybe assigning more points to Javonte than he's actually put up. So
That's fair.
we're viewing him as like a bell cow, 15, 20 point guy when he hasn't done it yet. So, this is still a team where, if he was putting up those 20-point weeks, then, I'd say, well, yeah, I mean, they're not getting that out of Jeff Wilson, or you can't rely on Jeff Wilson to give you that like you could Javonte. But since we haven't seen it, I feel like it's more replaceable talent. Again, I would rather have Javonte in my lineup. I'd feel more confident, but in the meantime, Jeff Wilson, he's looked very good stepping in. I would have to look more into the Bucs game last week. I would say, game script maybe got him off of things. It's still weird that Fournette only got 3 carries. I mean, he did have 45 carries in the first 2 weeks combined.
Right.
But I mean, he still got 7 targets, and he's always been very active in the pass game, and especially in a half-point PPR, that's always very important. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. I should say more. I think the running backs can hold them over. Not that they're fine, but I think they can get the job done. I think Kareem Hunt can give you enough. I think Fournette can always give you enough. I mean, that's a guy that we have seen be top 10. Jeff Wilson can do it. And of course, yeah, until Elijah Mitchell comes back, then that could be a huge hit. And then, yeah, I mean, Akers, I've never really been sold on, or I should say since the Achilles injury, I've been, kind of very down on, but he did seem to kind of win some snaps back from Henderson. And then, yeah, I'm looking at last week and he didn't do anything at all. He had 8 carries for 13 yards.
Yeah, he lost at 60-40.
No catches on his 1 target. So, yeah, I mean, it is tough. And, I don't think he's very great right now. I think we are still seeing the effects of that Achilles and kind of the long-term effects and how hard it is to really come back and be effective and be explosive and all that. So it's like Akers kind of gets whatever's given to him, right? If the line can give him 5 yards, then he's going to get those 5 yards, but he has not shown the ability to be a playmaker out of that backfield or anything. So you are right that, maybe that depth at running back really isn't that great, but I also do think that they are a team that's going to be looking, and I can actually confirm, because I was shopping around Sanders this week. They are interested in Sanders, but the thing that Igor told me is that they'd come back to me because we're trying to get a bigger target right now.
Yeah.
So,
and I will say the Javonte injury did happen at a good time for the Vipers. At week 4, they kind of have like 4 weeks here to like kind of play and
they got plenty of time to figure it out.
Yeah, they have like 4 weeks before the real trade deadline dash for assets happens and fire sales happen. So, I mean, they can kind of plug those guys in and see if it's going to work for them or if they do want to make that big move, because they've got 2 pins 23 first, which is going to be a late pick that just screams sell to me for a running back.
Yeah. There's no point in holding that. But yeah, I mean, I think they'll be fine. I think they're very, still strongly in this top 2. But I think it's also tough to beat Simcoe, right? I mean, like Simcoe. I said, best team in the league. I'm already engraving that trophy. I mean, that's a powerful team. I mean, he's up 15 points in the Vipers right now. 4-0. It's just tough to debate it. How are you feeling about Simcoe? I mean, he's doing this all without Keenan Allen too. So I mean, once he gets Keenan Allen, it's over.
Yeah, not just
Keenan Allen and Nuck Hopkins back in the lineup.
That's what I'm saying. It's not even just Keenan Allen, but he hasn't even put Dobbins in his bench yet. I mean, he hasn't put Dobbins in the starting lineup yet. Yeah. So like Dobbins hasn't scored any points for him. Obviously, Keenan Allen's been out, and D-Hop hasn't come back from the suspension yet. So like this team has put up 130 in the last 3 weeks, 130 plus in the last 3 weeks, first in points for, and you've got 3 dynasty fantasy starters that haven't even hit a starting lineup yet. there's not much to say about Simcoe besides his name is engraved on the trophy, and anything less will be an extreme disappointment for him.
Yeah. I mean, there's really not much more to say. I mean, there's really no moves for him to make. I think he's kind of got the perfect roster. Like I said, Saquon's just looking generational. I can't imagine trading that guy away, especially doing it for a guy that's worse than Geno Smith. I guess maybe Mikey got some buyback on that trade with Melvin Gordon now being the lead back in Denver. But Tim Patrick's not scoring many points this year, and that 2023 Wallace pick that got traded, I don't think Mikey got that one in the trade, but I'm just looking at this trade right now, and I just can't believe it. I mean,
it's horrible.
Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, it's incredible. I mean, we talk about how important it is to have these two quarterbacks, and Lamar and Jalen Hurts. That, like I said, I mean, that could really be a co-MVP race right now, and having the two of them right there is insane. And then Barkley, the season he's putting up, and I mean, we saw some life out of Josh Jacobs last week too. Josh Jacobs put up 32 points.
Yeah.
28 carries, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's clearly the bell cow, and Josh Jacobs has been consistently underrated, right? I mean, he's a guy, he's 24 right now. He was RB21 his rookie year, only played 13 games. And then in 15 games in both 2020 and 21, he was RB8 and RB11. Right now he's RB7. Of course, he got that huge boost from last week, but I don't think his job's in danger right now. I don't think Zamir White's really pushing for carries right now. When I drafted him, I viewed him more as that Dame Harris. He's a second year redshirt, guy. But right now that backfield is his, and I'd feel very comfortable starting Josh Jacobs. And of course, last week it paid off. Simcoe did make that move. He upgraded at tight end. He got Tyler Conklin. You could finally get some production out of that position. This is a guy who's been getting 1 million targets a game. It is a little interesting. It's something to keep an eye on, right? He went from 7, 9, 8 targets. He was always in the green to now 5. That was with Zach Wilson there. It could be a little bit of a difference not having Flacco starting. He hasn't played because Conklin came in over the summer in free agency. So we haven't seen him with Zach Wilson. Maybe that is a big hit for him. That is yet to be seen. But right now I think that Jets offense might be throwing it a lot. They have made it an emphasis to get the tight ends involved. That's what Saleh wanted to do coming over for San Francisco. That's why they went out. They got Conklin. They got Uzoma, who has not done shit, in New York, but Tyler Conklin's been great. So I guess interesting trade for Simcoe. I guess when you're, that depleted at tight end, you have to make those moves. But that's a strong move for him. And, it's a team that's going to continue. And, there's no injuries there. This team is totally healthy, right? Besides Keenan Allen.
For now.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, you always got to wonder with Simcoe's team, but Hopkins is waiting in the wings. This is a very scary team. You're looking at who's going to get sent to the bench when he comes back. I mean, when Keenan Allen and Hopkins are back, you're going to have Christian Kirk and Adam Thielen on the bench. Those are two very start-worthy players. And, we're going to be talking Lamar, Barkley, Jacobs, Evans, Hopkins, Conklin, J.K. Dobbins, Keenan Allen, Jalen Hurts. That is horrifying.
Yeah, obviously Kyle Pitts in there for Conklin if you ever figure it out.
Yeah, if he ever, figures out how to play in the league. But that covers it. I guess okay, I'll read through them real quick. So going from 12 to 1 as always, Slippery Pete, Waukesha, the Slow Stroke Kings, Carson Wentz, I Love My Mom, Go Tigers, the Most Athletic Sons, Gino and the Zits, Team Two Pins, Big Brain LLC, The Occasional Vibers, and Lamar and the Shits. You got any more notes on the power rankings, Pete?
No, that's just about it. My last note for the show: Profit, Prospect, Pete's pick. Bijan Robinson over rushing yards tomorrow in the Red River Shootout. Oklahoma Sooners have let up 250 yards on the ground in the last 2 losses to TCU and Kansas State. Bijan's averaging 103 on 17 carries. He is going to absolutely eat up the Oklahoma defense tomorrow.
Love that pick. I'm on the game over. 65, I believe, is the number I got. Could be 65.5. As always, high scoring game. Might even be looking to take the second half over in that game, especially if it's a low scoring first half.
I like that.
Yep. That's the play I'm looking at. I don't got anything for my prospects. Hendon Hooker playing tomorrow. Big game against LSU. I am nervous. This is a game that they have to win, but it's a very losable game for them. I'd like to see Tennessee going into the Alabama game undefeated. That would be great. I think that kind of covers it. Jordan Addison will be playing as well. I guess those are 2 of the guys I'm putting my flag in. love to see him succeed. But yeah, I think that covers it. We'll be back next week. Let's get a guest on next week. How about that?
I like it.
Let's get a guest on. We got guys that want to come
We
on.
got a couple. We got a couple in the chamber.
Yeah, Wallace wants to come on. Jalil wants to come on. I've been trying to get talent on as well. So, we can get a little bit of a lineup going and, start working some guys in over the next few weeks, have some fun with it. But I think that covers it all. As always, welcome to our sponsors, or thank you to our sponsors, I should say, Sundog Multimedia and Easy Peasy Moving and Service. That is the Lex and Pete show. We will see you next week.
Horns up.
All right, let me see.